Hello and welcome back to Tales from Africa. This time we continue on with Jock of the Bushveld, diving into the chapter, Jess. Good dogs were not easy to get. I had tried hard enough for one before starting, but without success. Even unborn puppies had jealous prospective owners waiting to claim them. There's always plenty of room at the top of the tree, and good hunting dogs were as rare as good men, good horses, and good front oxen. A lot of qualities are needed in the makeup of a good hunting dog. Size, strength, quickness, sense and speed, and plenty of courage. They're very, very difficult to get, but even small dogs are useful, and many a fine feat stands to the credit of little terriers in guarding camps at night and in standing off wounded animals that meant mischief. Dennison was saved from a wounded lioness by his 2 fox terriers. He had gone out to shoot bush pheasants and came unexpectedly on a lioness playing with her cubs. And the cubs hid in the grass, but she stood up at bay to protect them, and he, forgetting that he had taken the big looper cartridges from his gun and reloaded with number 6, fired. The shot only maddened her, and she charged, but the 2 dogs dashed at her, one on each side, barking, snapping and yelling, rushing in and jumping back so fast and furiously that they flustered her, leaving the man for the moment. She turned on them, dabbing viciously with her huge paws, first at one, then at the other. Quick as lightning she struck right and left as a kitten will at twirled string, but they kept her out of reach. It only lasted seconds, but that was long enough for the man to reload and shoot the lioness through the heart. There was only the dog in our camp, and she was not an attractive one. She was a bull terrier with a dull, brindled coat, black and grey and shadowy stripes. She had a small, cross-looking eye and uncertain, always moving ears. She was bad-tempered and most unsociable, but she was as faithful as brave a dog ever lived. She never barked, never howled when beaten for biting strangers or Kaffirs or going for the cattle. She was very silent, very savage, and very quick. She belonged to my friend Ted, and never left his side day or night. Her name was Jess. Jess was not a favourite, but everybody respected her, partly because you knew she would not stand any nonsense, no pushing, patting or punishment, and very little talking to, and partly because she was so faithful and plucky she was not a hunting dog, but on several occasions it helped to pull down wounded game. She had no knowledge or skill, and was only fierce and brave, and there was always to risk that she would be killed. She would listen to Ted, but to no one else. One of us might have shouted his lungs out, but it would not have stopped her from giving chase the moment she saw anything, and keeping on till she was too dead beat to move any further on. The first time I saw Jess, we were having dinner, and I gave her a bone, putting it down close to her and saying, "Yeah, good dog." As she did not even look at it, I moved it right under her nose. She gave a low growl, and her little eyes turned on me for just one look as she got up and walked away. There was a snigger of laughter from some of the others, but nobody said anything, and it seemed wiser to ask no questions just then. Afterwards, when we were alone, one of them told me Ted had trained her not to feed from anyone else, adding, "You must not feed another man's dog. A dog has only one master." We respected Jess greatly, but no one quite knew how much we respected her until the memorable day near Ship Mountain. We had rested through the heat of the day under a big tree on the bank of a little stream. It was a tree under which Saltke prayed and died. About sundown, just before we were ready to start, some other wagons passed, and Ted, knowing the owner, went on with him, intending to rejoin us at the next outspan. As he jumped on to the passing wagon, he called to Jess, and she ran out of a patch of soft grass under one of the big trees behind our wagons. She answered his call instantly, but when she saw him moving off on the other wagon, she sat down in the road and watched him anxiously for some seconds, then ran on a few steps in a curious, quick, silent way, and again stopped, giving swift glances alternately towards Ted and towards us. Ted remarked laughingly that she evidently thought he had made a mistake by getting on to the wrong wagon, and that she should follow presently. After he had disappeared, she ran back to a patch of grass and lay down, but in a few minutes she was back again, squatting in the road, looking with that same anxious, worried expression after her master. Thus she went to and fro for the quarter of an hour it took us to inspan, and each time she passed we could hear a faint, anxious little whine. The oxen were inspanned and the last odd things were being put up when one of the boys came to say that he could not get near the guns and water barrel because Jess would not let him near them. There was something the matter with the dog, he said. He thought it was mad. Knowing how Jess hated Kaffirs, we laughed at the notion and went for the things ourselves. As we came within 5 yards of the tree where we had left the guns, there was a rustle in the grass, and Jess came out with her swift, silent run in the grass, appearing as unexpectedly as a snake does, and with some odd suggestion of a snake in her look and attitude. Her head, body and tail were in a dead line, and she was crouching slightly as for a spring. Her ears were laid flat back, her lips twitched constantly, showing the strong white teeth, and her cross, wicked eyes had such a look of remorseless cruelty in them that we stopped as if we had been turned to stone. She never moved a muscle or made a sound, but kept those eyes steadily fixed on us. We moved back a pace or two and began to coax and wheedle her, but it was no good. She never moved or made a sound, and the unblinking look remained. For a minute we stood our ground, and then the hair on her back and shoulders began very slowly to stand up. That was enough. We cleared off. It was a mighty uncanny appearance. Then another tried his hand, but it was just the same. No one could do anything with her. No one could get near the guns or the water barrel. As soon as we returned for a fresh attempt, she reappeared in the same place and in the same way. The position was too ridiculous, and we were at our wits' end. For Jess held the camp. The Kaffirs declared the dog was mad, and we began to have very uncomfortable suspicions that they were right. But we decided to make it a last attempt, and surrendering the place approached from all sides. But the suddenness with which she appeared before we got into position so demoralized the Kaffirs that they bolted, and we gave up, owning ourselves beaten. We turned to watch her as she ran back for the last time, and as she disappeared in the grass we heard distinctly the cry of a very young puppy. Then the secret of Jess's madness was out. We had to send for Ted. When he returned a couple of hours later, Jess met him out in the road in the dark, where she had been watching half the time ever since he left. She jumped up at his chest, giving a long, tremulous whimper of welcome, and then ran ahead straight to the nest in the grass. He took a lantern and we followed, but not too close. When he knelt down to look at the puppies, she stood over them and pushed herself in between him and them. When he put out a hand to touch them, she pushed it away with her nose, whining softly in protest and trembling with excitement. You could see she would not bite, but she hated him to touch her puppies. Finally, when he picked one up, she gave a low cry and caught his wrist gently, but held it. That was Jess, the mother of Jock. Thank you very much for listening to this week's episode of Tales from Africa, and I look forward greatly to seeing you again next time. Goodbye.